the latest situation in Bannu is that the compound, which is basically a CTD police station, and as you know, that it's basically a counter-terrorism department's detention center. And because of several happenings, militant activity basically in the southern parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we've seen IB raids conducted, intelligence-based operations, and so a few dozen of militant organizations and their members had been rounded up and been detained over here for questioning. But there's been a lot of, misinformation or disinformation, regardless of whatever nomenclature you use for it, on how actually this incident is erupted. But I can tell you now, the area has been surrounded by the special support group troops, but there's been no physical action and no firing that's taken place since yesterday. We know for sure that there are negotiations, there are security personnel and officials who specialized in negotiations with terrorists, and they are talking to them currently, trying to convince them to give up their arms, release the prisoners, and go back to their cells. Once, if the negotiations fail, then we might see some kind of an operation that might take place in this vicinity. But I think it's also important in order to understand how this incident took place, because I saw a lot of fake news circulating since yesterday, saying that it was one of those incidents where somebody had carried out an attack from outside. They had attacked this particular installation. And I think if people know the physical geography of this area, in terms of where it is located, it's almost impossible to penetrate that location because this is inside the walled cantonment zone. And now we know for sure that some of these people were being interrogated while they managed to snatch a weapon from one of the police officials who was interrogating them, and who subsequently took the police officials along with other security forces officials who came in later as hostages. They released some of the other people from the prison as well, and the number of actual militants that were implicated are like somewhere between 9, but the total number of hostages that we know, including the people from the security forces and the police, some are around about 27 individuals. So it's an ongoing process. A lot of it is not being reported because editorially, when there is a hostage negotiation situation, it's not live telecasted. But we've seen several videos come out, and the Tehreek-i-Taliban, themselves claiming that they are their people who are inside. Plus, they're using communication methodology as well to communicate with their original group as well. So we do know that their communication modes are on. There's different levels of engagements that are taking place, and likely the outcome would be tonight. So Khyber Pakhtunkhwa police, because we knew that there's been specific legislation in relation to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa police in the last 5 to 6 years, which is known as the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Police Act, under which police has been made autonomous in certain ways. It's also been identified as a terrorist fighting force, which was not in one of its emblems since the beginning of the police service in this area. But we do know that the police generally is not a terrorist fighting force, and that's why the Counter-Terrorism Department of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is a specialized force that only deals with terrorist entities. And we also know for sure that there are economic problems, as well as the equipment and training is a huge issue, particularly in the southern parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where its footprint is being established, and more so in the tribal belt, where by extension of the merger of FATA into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we see now what was being conducted by the military initially being handed over to the Counter-Terrorism Department. Now there are a heavy amount of funds that are required to actually establish the CTD's footprint in these localities, and it's an open secret across Khyber Pakhtunkhwa that they are not well equipped. Rather, they are still relying on other forces as well as the district government to run the affairs of the Counter-Terrorism Department. And so with the looming threat in Pakistan because of the massive build-up in Afghanistan, the CTD is rendered helpless, regardless of whatever they might show as their achievements. But we do know that they are not well equipped if you make that comparison with Punjab. So the spike in terms of militancy, we see that beyond the Quad Tunnel right till North and South Waziristan, the two borders of Ghulam Khan as well as Angurada, both in the respective districts. We see this massive buildup of terrorists as well as terrorist activities across these localities. And there have been bigger incidents that have taken place even prior to this, but obviously it wasn't a hostage situation, so it hasn't made the kind of limelight that this news is particularly made. But I still think that there was a massive, casualty figure that's been evaded because that area has been sealed. If most of these people who are in captivity, and we now know for sure that their affiliations are with the Tehreek-i-Taliban, with the various videos and statements that have come in so far, if they've actually managed to run free across cantonment, the casualty count as well as the damage incurred would have been very high. They've been surrounded, they've been put in control in that locality, but nevertheless, because when a counter-terrorism department suffers such an incident, it comes across as an embarrassment. But that is not all. There's been a suicide attack today in North Waziristan. This is probably the second attack in less than a week's time in this area. And we've seen the police being consistently targeted. If you look at the casualty figures that the Counter-Terrorism Department has only released day before yesterday, we see that over 123 policemen have been killed so far this year, which is a huge figure. And there have been more than 250 that are injured. Regardless of the fact that they've actually managed to capture a terrorist and evaded several casualties that would be incurred in public places as well. But we do see the spike in militancy. And I think this is directly proportional to what's happening in Afghanistan. Despite the claim that has been the official narrative, where we said that the defense has managed to stop this infiltration. But we do see now that when multiple pockets of militants are appearing across the international border, it's not easy, but it's not impossible as well for these militant groups to actually come into Pakistan and carry out their activities. So if Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and its urban sphere is under fire from all directions, this is not stopped here. And if certain steps and measurements are not taking place, we do see that this might be spreading further. And I think the Afghanistan part needs a little bit of further explanation because we saw that the initial video of the militants in the compound, when it came to the forefront, the statement that was made was that they wanted to have a safe passage to Afghanistan, and they were asking for, being picked up via a helicopter or any other source and airlifted rather than brought into Afghanistan. But we know that Afghanistan's de facto government or the interim government of the Taliban has denied harboring any sorts of terrorists that are from different borders, from different nationalities, different ethnicities in different countries under the Doha Agreement. So they might have to suffer penalties. So that came as a shock as well, that somebody who's actually taken several Pakistani soldiers as well as intelligence officials, as they would be asking to be left into Afghanistan, where there is a government that was installed as Lord by several actors, including the United States itself. Then we saw the Tehreek-i-Taliban statement in reaction coming up this morning, saying that they had their bases in Pakistan, and so they did not want them to be shifted to Afghanistan. So they asked that these people who have taken these people hostages to be left in areas of North and South Waziristan. And then later on, we've seen another video that's come in from inside that compound that's been circulated as well on various militant platforms, claiming that the media had actually taken in the wrong message and that they wanted to go into South and North Waziristan. So I think that initial messaging of Afghanistan has put up some pressure, while some of the leadership is in Afghanistan. That's a well-known, established fact now. And I think that part needs a little more clarity, as well as some kind of push from on the diplomatic level between both countries. And I think we could have a solution that would avoid casualties. But for now, there's a deadlock. We do not see anything moving ahead. And I think that as the militants wear out, being choked for water supplies and food since yesterday, we might see some kind of action if negotiations fail.